Good morning, afternoon, evening. Um, I hope you can all hear me well. So, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all to the first webinar organized as part of ICCROM lecture series. I welcome our panelists, Dr. Shubha Chaudhuri from American Institute of Indian Studies, Mr. Abdelhamid Saleh from Egyptian Heritage Rescue Foundation, Dr. Ming Chee from Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated, Ms. Celina Rincón from the Ministry of Culture, Colombia, and Ms. Alessia Strozzi from Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage. Um, Aparna Tandon and myself, Rohit Jigyasu from ICCROM, will be moderating this session. Um, this is the first of the new ICCROM lecture series, which will be delivered periodically through this platform. This session will also be recorded and made available through ICCROM webpage. Before I proceed further, may I apprise you of some procedures for housekeeping during this webinar. You can send your queries and comments via Q&A icon that you see at the bottom of the ribbon. You can see that if you look below. We will take up some questions after the presentations by our panelists. In case we are unable to answer all the questions due to shortage of time, we will surely respond to you via email that we'll be sharing with you at the end. Let me start for those who may not know us by giving a brief background of ICCROM. The International Center for the Study of Preservation and Restoration of Cultural Property, ICCROM, is the intergovernmental organization working in the service to its 137 member states for promoting the conservation of all forms of cultural heritage in every region in the world. It was established in 1956 and is headquartered in Rome with the regional office in Sharjah. ICCROM undertakes global initiatives in conservation, training, information, research, cooperation, and advocacy for heritage organizations and professionals. Well, we all are in the midst of this unprecedented situation due to COVID-19 pandemic. The global crisis has impacted our lives in so many ways, disrupting our very fabric of society and also impacting cultural heritage in many ways. Just as an example, according to data compiled by UNESCO as on 27th April, out of 167 state parties with World Heritage properties, 121 countries have closed their sites totally. This webinar aims at understanding how cultural heritage has been impacted in various regions in the world, and then identify the needs and priorities for heritage during this crisis. I will now pass the floor to my colleague Aparna Tandon. Aparna, over to you.
Thank you, Rohit. Greetings to our panelists and attendees who have joined us from all over. Unlike previous experiences with disasters and epidemics, the global nature of COVID-19 pandemic is impacting all aspects of our lives. Among those badly impacted are artists, artisans, and cultural bearers who depend on their daily earnings to survive. Measures for social distancing have also led to a dramatic drop in visitor numbers. As a result, cultural heritage sites and institutions have suffered massive cuts in their budgets and have to lay off staff. Reduced staff and resources could lead to increased exposure to secondary risks such as fire and theft and looting. Today, our heritage sites and institutions are more vulnerable to natural hazard events such as earthquakes and hurricanes. In order to support cultural heritage sector in these times of crisis, and gather on the ground reports, as well as share experiences from our professional networks, ICCROM has prepared a web page on heritage in times of COVID. It features tools, tips, and links to external resources, which we will briefly explain during the course of this webinar. However, today we would like to start with sharing of impacts, emergent needs, as Rohit pointed out, and strategies that our colleagues have been using in different parts of the world to protect heritage and associated communities. Our first speaker is Shubha Chaudhuri, who is the director of the Archives and Research Center for Ethnomusicology at the American Institute of Indian Studies in Delhi, India. Her areas of specialization include audiovisual archiving, ethnomusicology, and intellectual property rights management. She has been active in training for archiving, as well as she's an expert in intangible heritage. So without further ado, I hand over to Shubha. Shubha.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much to Aparna and Rohit for getting us all together to share whatever we can in the few minutes about this very amazing, unprecedented event that we find ourselves in with COVID-19. As Aparna mentioned, of course, the main impact of this is an economic one on all sectors of society. And when we talk about intangible cultural heritage bearers, it's the same situation that the people who are dependent on their livelihoods for as culture bearers are devoid of their livelihood, and thus those of them who are on the lower rung of them are really grappling with starvation. This is a very unprecedented situation. It's very different from any kind of natural or man-made disaster we've ever faced. It fortunately does not have the same loss of life as we have seen, or of property, fortunately, up to this extent in India. What is very strange is that everything exists, but you have no access to it. So when we come to intangible cultural heritage, we are talking at this point of the economic distress and livelihood concerns of performers and craftspersons, who are the main uh, producers of cultural goods at this time. With the cancellation of performances, festivals, venues, and even access to traditional forms of patronage, we find musicians and other forms of performers completely devoid of having their normal access. For craftspersons, lack of access to material, other services, as well as a market has completely brought this sector down on its knees. There are many events like festivals, exhibitions, and this that happen all through the year in a place like India, which gives a market to all these kind of cultural goods, has been totally removed. Tourism, as we all know, is a double-edged sword. We blame it for a lot of dilution that goes on, decontextualization that happens, where we see a lot of changes happening to forms of heritage, but it is undoubtedly one of the biggest supporters of cultural heritage. And with this collapse of tourism, we find that there's a very, very big impact on the economic situation. We are fortunate in India that there has been quite a robust, growing support system for ICH in India, with uh, NGOs and individuals and groups of individuals coming together to collect funds to reach to the most affected, those who are really in need of economic succor at this time, and are already making plans for the kind of measures that will have to be taken once the lockdown is lifted. This is a much more organized sector in the crafts domain compared to the music and performing side of it. The digital platform has emerged as one of the most effective ones in this area, one of the only things that's working, The penetration to rural areas and the internet is also there because of the smartphones. It allows funds to be transmitted digitally, and there is a dramatic increase in the digital platform being used for performances at all levels. E-commerce, though, however, wherever it exists, is not functioning due to the transport and delivery systems being held at abeyance. However, institutions and NGOs are able to access their digital assets, contacts, networks, and are thus able to work and reach out to the communities of practitioners. At this time, I think it's very, very important to remember that there is an ICH beyond the market. It's not only a matter of producers and consumers. We need to realize it, in spite of this crippling economic crisis, that intangible cultural heritage includes social practice, traditional knowledge, rites and rituals, festivals, and cultural expressions that go beyond performance and crafts. The lack of these being practiced or observed is a major impact on society and culture as we know it. Of course, wherever this happens, we know that the more marginalized in these societies are the ones who are most affected. This is true in normal times as well as this kind of crisis, where we see that those of these margins are the ones who are left out even in normal cultural discourse. So, what can we do after the lockdown? What is the scenario that we can look at? Part of the problem is its huge uncertainty. When will this be lifted? How will it be lifted? We know that economic distress will have to be addressed first. Government and non-governmental agencies will be the ones having to deal with it. An important factor that we feel that we could have been developed more in India is that of the digital platform, that we do not have a sufficient mechanism to deal with copyrights and royalties of online performers. Uh, and more than just marketing crafts, we have not really managed to develop this. And this is an area that we can look at later. However, I feel very strongly that we need to not lose track of the fact that it's the core values of intangible cultural heritage and its aesthetics that sustains a culture and its society. That an existing threat already comes from looking at culture only from the point of view that is what sells. So we must pull ourselves back, look at safeguarding the real essence, the real core of the expressions of intangible cultural heritage if we are to move forward from this. Lastly, we need to assure that artists and artisans do not give up their arts and crafts because it cannot support them. They should not be in a place where they would make more money digging roads than be bearers of culture. They should not only be afforded a livelihood, but dignity, respect, and recognition. That we give our culture that intangible space at the center of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhuri. I think you really brought out a very important point that we cannot look at intangible heritage only in terms of what sells. What we have to really support in this crisis are those craftsmen, are those people who have to survive to carry on these cultural practices, to be able to take forward this traditional knowledge in the future. And it cannot be looked at only from the economic lens. I think that was an important lesson that you brought forward. ICCROM, with its people-centered approach, is always considering people as part and parcel of heritage. And I think this approach has to be really carried forward even in this crisis situation. So thank you very much, Dr. Chaudhuri. And now, I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Abdelhamid Saleh, the chairman of Egyptian Heritage Rescue Foundation, an expert member of ICOMOS International Scientific Committee on Risk Preparedness. Mr. Abdelhamid Saleh has been spearheading various activities on disaster risk management of cultural heritage in Egypt and other countries in the MENA region. He will be presenting case of museums in Yemen. So I now invite Mr. Abdelhamid Saleh to make his presentation, please.
Thank you so much, Rohit. Thank you, Aparna, and thank you, ICCROM, for this important webinar and where we all can meet. I see many participants are with us. Uh, Actually, since Rohit contacted me and talking about COVID, I'm thinking about our colleagues in Yemen, and especially the Museum of Aden, because we are working with them since almost 8 or 9 months now, and we are trying to mitigate other hazards like conflict, like looting, like heavy rains, and then we attacked by this global crisis, COVID-19. So while we are preparing for this, we are trying actually to think about, yes, our healthy is so important, and we need to take steps to protect our healthy, but also we need to take steps and measures to not erase our heritage and not erase our history and to keep our identity actually. And this is cultural heritage, of course, and this is the evidence of our history. So what we are doing that, for example, in Cairo here, we experienced in the last month, just in the last month, two looting actually. And this is what we just recorded. And alhamdulillah, we had CCTV, so we can record and we could see who did it. And for sure, the police at some point will take it. But in Yemen, the situation is different because even if we have CCTVs there, electricity is not stable at all. Actually, we have like 2 times electricity in the day. So in the total, electricity cut about 18 or 17 hours per day. So if even we establish CCTVs, so we cannot control, we cannot ensure actually they are going to record in the time of electricity, and if we are going to buy generator to keep electricity in the time of the power cut. Actually, we don't, and they don't have enough fund and enough money to implement and to provide something like this. So we are thinking about how to keep our heritage safe there in Yemen and also here in Egypt. But unfortunately speaking, the situation there, they are in complex emergency. As I said, now COVID-19, conflict, armed conflict, heavy rains, which is not easy to hit in this situation, in this weather in Yemen or this time of the year in Yemen, and also many other looting accidents before. So we are thinking together and we teach them an emergency course on emergency documentation first. Second, how to protect and how to secure the data in multi sources and how to make multi-copy actually. And they are saving 3 copies in their city and 1 copy outside of the whole country, outside of Yemen actually. And this is something really we could do it, and we could share, we could convert their inventory to a digital. So far, we didn't do it all, but we did a good part out of it. So by now, we had a good start actually to work in 2 things. First, to documentation. So if it's gone, we may can bring it back. And actually, the second thing, we trained them how to secure the museum and how to make like a kind of overlapping about security, because digital things there are not provided and are not secured actually to be used because of the electricity and also because of many other situations there. So this is what I would like to share with you about the experience in Yemen and about thinking to mitigate one main hazard and not forget at all the other secondary hazards that for sure have impacting our heritage. It used to be impacting our heritage. It's impacting our heritage now. And of course, if we are not taking any further steps, it will continue impacting our heritage. And we don't want to come back out of this global crisis. And we found many emergency cases to provide. If we don't take steps now to mitigate secondary hazards out of COVID-19, our life will be so difficult to protect our heritage in the future. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Aparna. This is what I would like to share so far.
Thank you, Abdelhamid, for that very insightful presentation. As you have rightly pointed out, there are parts of the world where there are there is an interface of disasters, conflicts, and pandemics. So multi-hazard approaches and multi-hazard mitigation strategies are very important. Thank you also for sharing the mitigation strategy that you have employed in the museums, thereby digitizing, creating multiple copies, and as also pointed out previously, digital technologies have assumed a new importance in this time, and what is documented can perhaps be recovered in case it is subjected to the unfortunate incidents of looting or theft. But still, it's a very complicated situation. And as a ICCROM and its partners will have to invest into multi-hazard approach for disaster risk management. And that's clearly a direction that we are receiving from the field. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Ming Chee, who is the General Manager of Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated. She manages Georgetown UNESCO World Heritage Site. Ang is sharing a mitigation plan and preparedness plan that she and her team have put in place to respond to the current pandemic. Over to Ang Ming Chee.
Hi, I'm Ang. So I'm from Georgetown World Heritage Incorporated. We are the site managers. So site managers work daily on the sites, you know, even with COVID-19 and even when you have to work from home, we are still the site managers bearing the responsibility to ensure that our cultural heritage is safeguarded and conserved. So I will be sharing with you with my PowerPoint. Hopefully you can see it. Okay. I mean, from December until February, you know, that during that phase, it's very important for us to be informed of what is COVID-19. How do we protect ourselves and not getting sick? This information is important because not only we have to train our own staff, we also need to educate the public to tell them like, please stop mass gathering. We have to change our way of life. By March 2020, Malaysian government has imposed the movement control order. So it's a bit the lighter version of lockdown. We can still go out to buy food, but we have to work from home and avoid going out. During this time, it's very important to impose the community-based management. Get the phone numbers of the community, call them, get in touch, get connected, because it builds the togetherness. Although it's just digital, just a phone call, it keeps you having hope that, you know, we are on this together. And it is also important to hear the communities, the practitioners, the cultural barriers of what are the immediate changes and how can we provide needs, how can we pool resources, for example, availability of food for the elderly who live alone in the world side. So we communicate these needs and make it available to help them to overcome the day-to-day challenges. Of course, when we enter April, we started to brainstorm more incentives. We work together with the other departments under the state government of Penang, and there are a lot of incentives provided by the government, for example, food, masks, one-off cash, grants, loans, and so forth. It is also very important to have the two-way processes, you know, listen to the real needs, the voice from in the short-term, mid-term, and long-term basis. And for information, tomorrow onwards, our office will resume our physical operations in Georgetown. So we are going to start innovations to brace the new normal. What do we mean by the new normal for cultural heritage? That means like we have to help the performers, the artisans, the traders to be able to enter the new market using e-platform, e-commerce, digitalizations, documentations over the internet. This is very difficult because not everyone is techno-savvy, but we see that it is possible to do it. So site managers, at least from our part, we will work very hard towards this direction to help everyone to be able to adapt into the new normal. For example, today is actually Vesak Day. So Buddhists will celebrate Vesak Day, but we are not allowed to go out. We are not allowed to go to the temple. So you actually adapt the way you do cultural heritage. How do you practice and celebrate the ritual and festive of a Vesak Day at home? It does not change my belief as a Buddhist, but I do believe that it's important for us to note down there are possibilities for us to continue our cultural heritage despite the ongoing challenges. I want to emphasize here that cultural heritage contains wisdom and resources passed down from our ancestors, and it will provide tremendous capital resources for many to stay strong and hopeful, embracing the bright and new normal. I don't think that we have to be too sad about the new normal. There's good and bad. There's always opportunity in every challenges. But I would say as site managers, we will solve one problem by the time, work with every committee, take enough of social distancing, and work together with other site managers, not only from Malaysia, but also from Europe, from Africa, and from the other regions. And I believe that, we will be able to brace this together. So thank you for the opportunity, and I hope this is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was very, very good presentation, because it gives hope for site managers that we can really make it. Even in this difficult situation, there are ways in which we can adapt. There are ways in which we can still use our technology to the best in this situation, and carry on with our jobs, with our responsibilities, keeping in mind social distancing, keeping in mind all the new normals as we have been witnessing. So thank you very much, Dr. Ang, for presenting this. I think it is important that we not only take care of our heritage, but also staff who is taking care of heritage. So it's important that we consider safety and well-being of those who are managing our heritage as well. So now I'm very pleased to introduce you to Ms. Celina Rincón from Colombia. Ms. Rincón is not speaking with us, although she has joined us, but we have the privilege of having her video, which she has recorded for us. Ms. Rincón is a specialist in urban and regional planning and is a master architect with a specialization in restoration and rehabilitation with 20 years of experience. And she's working at the Ministry of Culture in Colombia. She will be presenting now, and so I request the video of Ms. Celina to be played. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thanks to ICCROM for this very important, informative, and inspiring space. It's a great opportunity to reinforce our work and show the positive role of heritage in managing and recovering from this pandemic, as well to improve the world. Some data about COVID-19 in Colombia presented by the President every day. This virus is affecting not only human health, but also the economy, and then what is needed for social appropriation, protection, sustainability of the heritage. Among the most economically affected people are those who derive their livelihood from their traditional knowledge and practices. Even in the stage in which we are, we must think and move to the face of social, economic, and environmental recovery with new challenges. The majority of World Heritage sites are essentially public. Cultural heritage is not the objective, but the means to join people with the highest social and cultural values. We must develop, among others, virtual platforms for heritage to continue connecting people with each other along with their memories and promoting technological developments. The protocols necessary to protect people and heritage when cultural sites can be revisited. To put more value on the role of cultural knowledge and practices in sustainable development. To increase knowledge, techniques, means, agreements for heritage, broad participation, and comprehensive projects. Promote creativity, innovation, shared and cooperative management, public-private, community synergies. One case to share with you. The School Workshops of Colombia, coordinated by Susana Eslava. This program was born in 1992 and was inspired by the program created in Spain in 1985 to help young people through training in traditional trades. The schools are located in Colombia in 12 cities, 3 of them in World Heritage Sites. Also, this program is part of the safeguarding strategy of traditional craft for peacebuilding inscribed last year on the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices. There are 527 apprentices, 70 teachers, 50% without access to internet or computers. They suspended their face-to-face activities on March 16. As instant actions, they are creating new digital, virtual, and remote work content for training. They are looking for support to equipment and connectivity networks. They change operating spaces to buy food for apprentices and teachers and pay for internet services to continue training activities. They offer food services at home. The Mobile Workshop School campaign was implemented to create virtual content for training process. And in the Salamina workshop, weavers also make masks. Susana is also working in the measures of the recovery phase, like the creation of new digital and virtual content around craft and cultural heritage, modification of training plans to create face-to-face spaces with a low occupancy rate. Emergency school workshops will be held to support the productivity units of the workshop schools and the master's craftsmen, promoting the production lines and service portfolios. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you one day in Colombia. A very warm hug to you all.
Let me introduce our next panelist. Her name is Alessia Strozzi, who defines herself as a believer of humankind. She trusts in its resilience and always focuses on the positive side. Alessia works as a conservation officer for the Italian Ministry for Cultural Heritage and is also an active volunteer for the Red Cross, has been working actively in disaster situations, and today she'll be sharing her experience with us. Over to Alessia.
Thank you, Aparna. I'm sharing the screen. Okay. Yep. So, thank you very much. All my warm greetings to all the participants, and really a big thank you to ICCROM and Aparna Rohit for starting these webinars. This is just the first. So my first thing that really for me, the first and most things to say, and it's a thank you to all the cultural sector that has shown a strong and prompt response to protect the life of people. So as soon as the government said you need to close, there was no request or nothing. So far in Italy, we can see that the COVID has two indirect impacts. The short term, that's everything is locked down, no one can go. It's like everywhere in the world. And as also other panelists have already said, that's also what we are going to face is the long-term impact of the pandemic is that the cultural business, so the cultural institutions and the business related will be really deeply affected. And for this, also the tourist sectors will be the most damaged because, you know, we are talking about cultural business, tourist sectors, but behind this word are lives, people that really on this livelihood, on their work. And so, and the study, the economical study has shown that this is going to last for at least 2 years. This is really sad. And I think we need to work on improving our way of see our cultural heritage and to help those people in need. Then now let's just direct focus on the real threat to cultural heritage. There is this need to sanitize. I'm not saying that we don't have to sanitize, because we have to for our own health, which is really important, but we need to be careful on what we are going to use and what we do. Because at the moment, isolating cultural heritage is the most secure things that we can do. So we can also read more on the ICCROM webpage, like Aparna at the beginning just said. There is a dedicated webpage that you can look for further information. I would like really end with a really positive remark, because all of this sad situation that we are facing, I want to bring you online, if you can, also through the webcam you can do later at home, to see Venice. Venice is a city that was defined by Salvatore Settis as the dying city, because it was a city overwhelmed by tourists. It was if you wanted to go and have a walk, it was a real stressful walk in the street, because they were full of people, full of tourists. But now, thanks unfortunately to the COVID, Venice has got back her quietness, you know, now has back the clean water, you can see fishes. So at the moment, there is a Venice to read in books or in poems. And this is something that we should really to take into account. We will be back in our normal life and focus on a sustainable tourism, because what has happened to Venice has happened all over the world. And the last remark that I want to say is that we do not have to be worried of crisis, because every crisis is a turning point, you know, and it's up to us if we want to turn in a positive way and learn from it. You know, Italy has faced a lot of disaster during the years, but every disaster has taught us something. And this is why now we have a really good civilization system. The cultural heritage, the Minister of Cultural Heritage is completely integrated in the in the civil protection system. So this is my final word. Let's focus on the positive thing. I know it's really sad at the moment, but I'm sure that we can become better. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alessia. If you can stop sharing your slide. Yes. Thank you. I think that was a very, very good presentation that you made. And you really stressed on looking at the positive side of things and how we can all look at getting through this pandemic, using cultural heritage as a source of resilience. I think it's a very important point for us to keep in mind. We are sorry that we are having a little technical problem with playing the presentation prepared by Celina, but I would just like to summarize what she wanted to convey through her presentation. In her presentation, she very eloquently mentioned the issues that are being faced about the skills and the crafts. How does one really not only revive them, but also build capacity? Because we cannot revive them if we don't try and continue our capacity building. And there are organizations in Colombia which have been really doing this initiative, using virtual medium, using other available online platforms to continue capacity building. And now when you cannot go to these workshops, when you're not able to really practice these skills and crafts by being physically present, I think that we not only need to look at awareness, but also we need to continue to train our craftsmen, our workers in continuing these skills even in this situation when they are not able to be physically present. So I would like to thank Celina for her excellent presentation and apologize that because of technical issues we are unable to really play the whole presentation. Now I would like to invite Aparna to summarize the key points of all our presenters, and then we will go forward from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rohit. I thank our panelists for sharing diverse challenges as well as strategies that we could use as we reopen sites and institutions. Clearly, there have been direct and indirect impacts on cultural heritage as the information we are receiving from our colleagues from different parts of the world, and new needs and secondary risks have emerged as emphasized by Shubha and Celina, as Rohit was also trying to summarize, there is a need to support livelihoods associated with the creation, maintenance, and transmission of cultural heritage. And I would like to very much repeat the words that Shubha shared earlier in her presentation: dignity, respect, recognition. That says it all. Because cultural heritage is a source of wisdom, is a source of knowledge and hope as well as resilience, as Ang highlights, and it is more important today than ever before to work with communities and to develop people-centered programs and practices so that we can deal with the uncertainty of the times. At the same time, as Alessia and Abdelhamid have underscored, we need to proactively manage secondary risks to cultural heritage, such as exposure to bleaches or other disinfectants, or looting, theft. That means a multi-hazard approach and working with other agencies and not working in in the silos that we sometimes tend to create around cultural heritage. No situation is fully negative. We have also learned, and we are seeing, getting reports that there is less pollution around heritage sites. Air is cleaner in our cities, and water bodies, rivers, and canals have begun to rejuvenate. This is also the moment for creation of heritage because many heritage institutions around the world are collecting photos, testimonies, records, and objects such as masks to record this moment in time and to think of how the humanity collectively dealt with this crisis, just as what we have been hearing about the Spanish flu and or the the epidemics or the pandemics that we have dealt with in the past. Now I hand over the floor to my colleague Rohit Jigyasu, who will outline some of the initiatives that ICCROM has undertaken to inform response and recovery, and hopefully also putting us on the path of resilience. So over to Rohit.
Thank you very much, Aparna. So ICCROM has set up a special page, and I will just share the screen with you. Here you go. Uh, Heritage in times of COVID. This is the page on the website, and we have received overwhelming support from our alumni. The web page includes, as you would see here, tips and resources, featured stories, and relevant links. The tips and resources provide guidance on the safety and security of staff, closure of heritage sites and institutions, and identifying immediate risks and monitoring, for which rapid assessment templates have been developed for movable, immovable, and intangible heritage. These templates can be downloaded from the page, and you can also, there are also translated versions of these templates, and you can alter these templates according to your situation so that it is more relevant to your context, and it is actually dealing with both pre, post, and during lockdown phases. The templates have a series of questions divided in various sections. For example, section 1 deals with baseline information, which has questions on pre-COVID status in terms of income, staff, and section 2 is about identifying impacts on heritage and secondary risks. Section 3 on needs and actions, and Section 4 on monitoring risks. As I mentioned, the templates are available for download in French, English, Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese, Arabic, and also Farsi or Persian. So we are from Friday, May 15th, and I'll just share another screen here. Uh, there you are. So from Friday, May 15th, ICCROM is introducing a series of webinars on heritage and pandemics, featuring strategies, tools, and tips for securing heritage and associated communities. Please watch out for our website for details on future public lectures and webinars. So here are a few that are already there, and we will be sharing this information to you on our website as well. Now we will take a few questions. We have been receiving many interesting questions here, and I'm now going to take a few of them, and I'll be asking our panelists to answer a few questions because these are directed at them. So the first question we have received is for Dr. Shubha, and the question is, how do craftsmen balance traditional production and free market to earn from their crafts? Could this be regulated? And could there be a subsidy structure that you can propose for that? So, Shubha, please.
Rohit, sorry, can you just repeat the first part of that question?
Sure. How do craftsmen balance traditional production and free market to earn from their crafts? And then could this be regulated? And could there be a subsidy structure for that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think there are many organizations who are now working with the crafts to help them retain their standard as well as create new designs to be able to reach markets without compromising the very nature of it. I think there have been already some schemes for being suggested for subsidizing materials, for maybe giving them a break from certain taxes, some schemes for loans, and these kinds of measures after the lockdown is over. In fact, there are already some schemes where people are being encouraged to buy online, paying maybe a discounted price and reserving craft products which will be delivered to them after the lockdown, so that this period need not be one where they only receive charity, but they're able to meaningfully sell their goods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, there is a related question which I'll also ask Shubha to really respond. This is about marginalized section. How can we support these marginalized groups? Because of course, we have craftsmen, but there are few who have access, but there are many who don't have access. So how can we really have targeted approach towards these marginalized sections? If you can very briefly touch on that part as well.
I think this is a very important question, and it's one that we must battle and struggle with all the time. It's not only craftspeople who actually have some point of market, but all the other bearers, the performers, people who are working in many other forms of cultural expression, where their what they do, the expressions are also limited in patronage, are limited in terms of the kind of audience they can get. This is something that is an ongoing story way, but I think that here it is that the role of NGOs and institutions can really play an important role in identifying these specifically, because normal social structure will tend to trample them down. And point that I somehow my presentation was, I think it's a very important measure is for us post-lockdown to really seriously think it India of a cultural inventory, so that a base we know what is in addition to its description and its practice. I hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shubha Chaudhuri. Now the next question I have is for Dr. Ming Ang. And there's a question for her. Of course, there will be an impact on in the heritage sector due to economic impact. How can heritage professionals develop strategies to recover and keep conservation of heritage going?
Um, Thank you, Rohit. Um, as I said earlier, the strategies, it should not be a top-down approach. You know, if you are heritage workers, cultural heritage workers, you know the targeted communities. Number one, get in touch with them. Even you are under lockdown, you are at home, call them, and then understand what are the primary issues, secondary issues, underlying issues. Jot it down and then discuss with the team. I agree with Alessia's suggestions that, you know, I mean, this COVID-19 is a big challenge, but it is also opportunities because cultural heritage is an important resources and it is a capital that we can use in this time of emergencies. Mainly because it defines your identity, and when people are in crisis, they want to, it will help, the cultural heritage will help them to understand themselves better. If cultural heritage workers are able to identify the particular resources that you can mobilize to present it to your funder, be it from government, be it from publics, that we should support this group of people or this particular art or this particular performance because it maintains our identity. We celebrate that identity, and identity gives people hopes. And that is the important part that we need to find out because, you know, facing COVID-19, everyone is worried from one issue to another. So let's use cultural heritage as the opportunity, as a capital and the resource for us to move forward. Back to you, Rohit.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ang. I think that you answered it in a very clear way. Now there is a question which is directed at ICCROM, and I will just take it up and try to answer it. Can ICCROM and other international organizations think of new ways to enhance sustainable tourism? I think this is a very important point. And well, we are all having going through this difficult time, but we all realize that, you know, as was mentioned earlier, the air has been cleaned. We no longer have cruises which are damaging our cultural heritage. Probably this is a time for us to really figure out what can we do in order to have tourism which can really be beneficial for human well-being and also for our survival of our heritage. ICCROM and also I think other organizations such as UNESCO are very much involved in this area. ICCROM, as I mentioned earlier, has put up people as in the center of its activities, and of course, has to think now in terms of what kind of guidelines can we develop in this new situation and also in post-COVID situation that kind of that is based on the lessons that we have learned from the situation, and also kind of thinking about the future of the people and our heritage. So I think that's an important thing for us to really keep in mind, that this crisis has made us realize the importance of thinking about nature and heritage, culture together. I mean, we cannot think about culture in isolation. It is really a part of the natural setting, and this has to be addressed in a holistic way. Um, then there is actually another question, which is really for Alessia. Alessia, there is this question about how can cultural heritage, how Italy has gone through such a difficult situation. It is now coming out of it. What do you think can be the major lessons that are learned that you think in the sector of cultural heritage in Italy, you know, one has really rethink the directions that one has to in order to really learn based on some of the lessons we have that you have learned from this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think what we have seen so far is, you know, we had a lot of. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well. Please go ahead.
Okay. So what we have seen so far, it was the increase of the digitalization of the cultural heritage to put online on the website to get to have it available for the people, for Italians that were at home, or also for all over the world. Once it's on the website, it's for everybody. So there was a huge demand from one side because, you know, there were ton of people that were at home doing nothing, you know, because they couldn't work, you know. So they used a lot the museum. You know, we know that Pinacoteca di Brera, it's the Brera Museum in Milan. It had an increase of online visitors, really 3 times more. And at the same time, the Brera Museum started to send, you know, any kind of sharing of the cultural heritage, even if the small branch, like where I work in the Superintendenza, my colleague, they've done videos on different works that they have done during the past, and they have shared, you know, so it was a way to get in contact with the Italians that were at home. And I think at the same time, you know, when you are here at home in the sofa, you are looking at video and say, oh, it's nice, this, you know, I've never been there, I should go. This is also a way that we will see later on a lot of visitors that will come and join. You know, I say, oh, during the pandemic, I was at home and I couldn't, I joined online this X whatever sites, and then I want to go and see direct. And but I think this is just the beginning. Truly, I really think it's just the beginning, because the second phase has just started here in Italy, and there will be a different way of approach. You know, at the moment the access is going to be controlled, the number will be less, and we need to see what will happen exactly.
Thank you very much, Alessia. So the next question I have is for Mr. Abdelhamid, and I will also request Aparna to maybe add a few additional points, remarks. One is, Mr. Abdelhamid, the question is, how does one deal with reopening of museums?
Uh, After COVID, I think we have to take many measurements and many rules in order to, because I think it will not finish soon. It will not, I think we have to live with this virus for the next maybe year, I think, like this. But however, life has to go on and we have to process our work. So we need to take some measurements. Actually, the good thing that our monuments will not catch COVID, just the people who can catch COVID. So, however, we need to use masks, we need to use sanitization, all of this. But as Elisa said, which we have to be careful which materials actually would like to touch our heritage. So, not like before, actually, some museums will not have that amount of visitors, but actually some other museums have a lot of people to visit. So we have to minimize these numbers, and this may be a good chance for other museums to receive more visitors. So we have to think about it, not so far, but we have to think about it. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. Aparna, maybe if you can also add a few from your experience and your ongoing work in this area, please.
Thank you, Rohit. Yes, but as I will just augment what Abdelhamid said. So there are some clear strategies that are emerging from all around the world. Number one, I think the primary one is that museums have to now introduce certain measures for COVID, which are COVID specific, like, for example, masks have to be provided. Also, crowds have to be avoided, and that means timed visitations, introduction of sanitizers, but making sure that bleaches and harmful disinfectants are not, the objects are not exposed to that. So there have to be clear guidelines for the visitors. So and also for the staff, some staff training will be required. clear communication to the visitors that the museum is providing or the library or the archive is providing a safe space for people to come in. And a lot of digital outreach programs, education and community engagement programs will have to be developed. Museums already have very strong, robust, in many places, docent communities. So they can actually, this is the time to activate volunteers, because if the staff cannot fully come back on, because many mothers are, the museum staff are, many of them are mothers, and schools have not fully reopened. So museums also have to take that into account, that they may not have full staff strength to get fully operational. At the same time, many are also contributing to the fight against COVID. So, for example, the Science and Industry Museum in Chicago is using its 3D printers to print frames for masks, N95 masks. Some museums have given their imaging software and equipment for studying how coronavirus looks and is helping scientists. So there are many such initiatives going on, and I think this is the key, where you become more relevant to your local community, and you may not have so much of a global tourism, but you may have more domestic tourism to look at. So it's more important that, as Ang was highlighting, that we are keyed in to our local communities and are looking at and trying to build more outreach and working with our communities together. So that, I think, is going to be one of the key strategies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aparna. We have received many questions. It is very difficult in this limited time to take up all the questions, but there are questions which are related to sustainable tourism. A lot of them are also related to potential role of digitization. There are a lot of these issues that we are now going to compile, and we'll take up these topics in our future webinars. So it's very useful for us to have your questions to us, because this gives us a real basis to plan our next actions. But one thing which is coming out very clearly and very strongly is that people are really in the center for this discourse. We have to really look at heritage in a people-centered way, and we have to address this issue only when we think about not just bricks and mortar, but think about those bearers who carry our heritage in the past to the present, and now will take it forward in the future as well. So this pandemic has taught us many lessons, and we have to really learn from them and move on. I request Aparna to say closing words.
Thank you, Rohit. Again, continuing from what you said, let's use heritage as a resource for building peace, resilience, and overcoming this pandemic together. And before concluding this webinar, we would like to once again express our heartfelt gratitude to all the panelists for their stimulating presentations, which brought out so many important points and orientations. We also thank all the attendees for participating in this very first webinar within the ICCROM lecture series and raising important questions. We will try our best to get back to you. The recorded version of this webinar will be shortly made available on ICCROM website. For future webinars and as well as ICCROM lectures, please keep on watching this space on our website, our social media platforms. And that's all. With that, I would like to take your leave. Thank you so much for your attention. Stay safe, stay strong, and together we will protect our heritage and our communities. Thank you very much.